Kid Boo's full auto combo, his light auto combo, has a couple of buffs to it. Let's get into it. Previously, it was a pretty stubby auto combo to go for. And not only that, it looked like it had some anti-air invincibility, or at least it probably deserved that properly based on its animation, but it didn't have that. You can see here, you would have to basically just beat the opponent's normal. If you were in the third hit of the auto combo before it actually came out with the active frames, the opponent's jump and attack could beat you pretty cleanly. Now, Kid Boo's full light auto combo goes a little bit farther. As you can see, it's about a half screen option. And in addition to that, it also now has jump attack invincibility. So now Kid Boo can actually, mindlessly swing away with his normal and dodge attack. And honestly, considering that they've given this buff to characters like Bardock or Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Kid Boo's auto combo kind of looked like it belonged in that same camp, and I'm surprised it's taken them this long to give this to him in the first place. It's not one change I necessarily like in the game, but considering if I'm stuck with, some characters having an auto combo like this, I think Kid Boo deserves to have one. His 5M has a couple of changes as well. Previously, at point blank range, this was a 10 frame startup medium. So at distances, it could go a little ways before connecting. Like once you actually got into range, you're looking about maybe 16 frames to travel its full distance. Additionally, with its full delay, if you whiff this, it was pretty heinous at -51. So overall, this wasn't really the best sort of thing for Kid Boo to be trying to poke out in neutral. It looks like one of those esports normals, but I mean, the recovery on this is vastly higher than some other normals of the same duration or length. Now, standing medium startup is a little bit faster. At point blank range, it's 8 frames startup, so 2 frames faster. And at distances, it's kind of scary. About the slowest I can get it to be is about frame 11, which is a big difference from what we were seeing earlier with about frame 16 from the other old patch example. They've also reduced the attack's overall duration, meaning that Kid Boo isn't stuck doing this animation for nearly as long. It's about 46 frames of total action here, meaning the move is just a little bit safer for Kid Boo to throw on out. This is kind of feeling like a proper esports normal now. 5H also has a couple of changes. Previously, it was a 12 frame startup normal at point blank range, and it was about -9 up close, spaced out. If it connected in later active frames, you could make it safe, but you had to be spaced out in order for that to work. Additionally, it was pretty stubby, meaning that if the opponent was able to successfully reflect against you, it could work in some instances. In fact, most of them. So it already sort of functioned as anti-reflect previously, but it certainly wasn't, a great normal to poke with, if you will. Now for standing heavy attacks buffs. The startup has been sped up by 2 frames, so now this is a 10 frame heavy startup move. Keep in mind, this is as fast as his crouching medium attack. In addition to that one, they reduced the delay, so instead of it being -9, it's now -5 at point blank range. Meaning that you can actually be a little bit safer than that at some farther distances. You can't quite get it to be plus. I think some of that just has to do with the changes and other factors to it, right? Unless, you get a spaced out 5H that lets you be plus on block. But there's also another change where they've increased the distance that it moves. So it comes out a little bit farther. It's not as stubby as it was before. Should mean that there might not be situations where a reflect is going to make this whiff ever, I think. There could be some max range stuff that could still make it apply, but it should be less frequent. In addition to that, the delay has also been reduced, so it's a little safer to throw out. And, again, it also means that it's safe on block now, giving Kid Boo yet another safe stagger point. Crouching Medium also has a couple of buffs similar to what we've been seeing so far. Let's look at its old properties first. So, this used to be a 10 frame startup normal with about -10 frames of disadvantage just due to how long the delay was. So, again, this meant that while you could poke with this move, Kid Boo wasn't actually ever really safe doing it, and he had to commit to going into another option. 5M was a good choice to be safe, as was 5S afterwards. But, even if he just wanted to do these or he already used those, then he was sort of out of options outside of that aforementioned 5S. Now let's get into the crouching medium attack buffs. While the 1M version has the same startup of 10 frames, the true down medium and the forward medium are a little bit faster, connecting at about frame 15 on each version. Not only that, they're now safe on block thanks to the reduced delay. Kid Buu once again has all of these as safe stagger options. So now his 5L is safe, his 2L is safe, 5M is safe, 2M is safe, and 5H is safe. He's a pressure monster now with like no unsafe normal option to go into, and we're still not done talking about all of his normals. Let's move on. Much like the other normals we talked about so far, crouching unique attack also has a couple of buffs to it. They've reduced the delay and the landing delay. So let's take a look at how we behaved before. So previously, Kid Buu could do this and be -7, so punishable, meaning that this wasn't a safe stagger option for him to go into. You could also, go in for a jump heavy here, but then you're playing with mind games of does the opponent reflect, and even if you did that, you were -4, as you can see here. Getting into his crouching unique attack, they've reduced the input delay as well as the landing recovery. So, Kid Buu here is about -1. It does say +5, but namely, it's the fact that you can air dash out of this now. So all of a sudden, Kid Buu could use this to set up some potential high-low crazy pressure mix-up options with the tool. And of course, the opponents reflect if they do guard cancel their reflect. This works as a natural reflect. Even if you go for the overhead option. So Kid Buu's got a very scary reflect bait in his kit now. Jump medium also has some changes, and they're very similar to the changes we discussed with 5M. First, a look at the old properties. As you can see, the first hit was about 10 frames startup previously, and it was pretty miserable to whiff, as it had a long duration rate to it. So then if Kid Buu whiffed this, he was stuck doing an animation, and the opponent could easily move in and punish him, or you were playing, vanish cancel mind games at that point. The jump medium buffs are going to look very similar to his 5M buff. Again, it's now 8 frame startup instead of 10 frame startup at close range, and the overall move duration has been reduced. So here it looks like about 49 frames of total animation time with the move, meaning that again, Kid Buu can be a little safer when throwing this move out. Able to jump before he touches the ground in this example. Some ranges where that might not have been possible for, thanks to the lower duration. Jumping down heavy is the next air normal to look at. Previously, it was 14 frames startup, and it also had a substantial amount of recovery. The total move seemed to take about 42 frames, at least for Kid Buu to execute the move and then recover after it. Kid Buu's jump too heavy has a speed up in its startup as well as a reduction in its delay. The move is now a 12 frame startup attack instead of frame 14, and it recovers in about 34 frames. So you can see how much faster Kid Buu is actually able to jump after this move. This also means I think Kid Buu can just hide gack indefinitely now. So there's that for permanently air stalling your options. Jump S and Jump 2S have some reduction in their landing delays. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that used to look like in the previous patch. If you instantly Tiger need a JS, well, you'd be -7 like this. But you could be a little bit safer if you went for the cross-up. However, you'll note here that Kid Buu, if he goes for this JS cross-up, is pretty much like always negative in this instance. You could be plus if you did a jump in like that, of course. So it wasn't like this move never could have plus frames, but it was certainly situational where you could. Looking at Jump 2S, which you would likely use in like some zoning instances, you could be plus at range. If you got closer, you'd be harder to hit. But you didn't have any air actions during the technique either. And again, if it's completely whiffed, pretty bad situation, but you'd imagine that would be the case regardless. Both his JS and his J2S have a reduction in their landing recovery, so let's check it out. So Kid Buu can actually Tiger Knee the same side and be safe. If he also goes for a cross-up, he's actually plus on block with this now, meaning that it's still very much his turn if he goes for this choice, bringing back this old mix-up. And as far as his Jump 2S goes, it's still kind of hard for him to recover in air, as you can see. In fact, I can't really get an instant air dash out unless I use the macro. But depending on your height and everything like that, there's going to be ranges where you can actually use this as an approach tool. And again, then get an overhead option afterwards with it. So these are some nice buffs to Kid Boo's pressure and neutral. We're finally done about talking about Kid Boo's completely juiced normals, so now let's get talking into his special attack, starting with the medium version of Mystic Ball Attack. Previously, there was only one time you can get with this move. In this situation in the corner is about 17 frames startup. Now they've added a new behavior to it, and I'll explain why they did so once we discuss the new behavior. So, if you do the input for Mystic Ball Attack normally, you still get the same timing where it connects on frame 17. But if you hold back during the input, it will now connect at frame 24. And you might be wondering, well, what's the point of that? Certainly, I would want the faster version of the move to come through. This change is actually here to streamline some of Kid Boo's Season 1 combo routing that he used to be able to do by hitting with a late meaty Mystic Ball Attack in his combos to then be able to pick it up. Because, if you take a look here, if I hit the opponent like this, I don't really get a combo. Actually, I'm not able to pick this up. But if I do the new version, I actually am able to carry the opponent up into the air with me. So it's kind of a quality of life buff that lets Kid Boo easily access these old combo routes he used to have with this new version of the move, which I think is a pretty cool change. Now that we've discussed like pretty much all of the combo related stuff in the patch notes for Kid Boo, I felt like it might be worthwhile to actually look at some of the new combos that he's able to do thanks to various changes that we've already discussed. So Videct here is actually able to show us using this medium ball loop a couple of times over. Turn that off. We get the smash launcher right there. 1 loop, 2 loop. Verb some pretty good damage, actually. 4K in the corner off of a 2L starter is probably about what you want to be seeing from a character. Now let's get into some saucy down heavy routes that you can do to punish anti-air attacks. You're going to be seeing a lot of the reduction in delay on some of the key blasts come into play here, as well as the increased startup delay. So, you know, a lot of that is made possible thanks to the recent buffs to Kid Boo. Now let's take a look at another thing. Get side swap. Even then, like, in the corner on the screen, you're able to do this still. Breaking 5,000 and almost building 2 bars solo. And if we're just going into the corner, all the way into a grounded sequence that lets you end in Candy Beam. Breaking 6K. I mean, this is some really good stuff for Kid Boo. And this isn't all the tech that Kid Boo has now. Of course, if you're getting people up into the air like that, well, then you can do a lot more things, as Liquid Enjoyer is going to demonstrate in these couple of examples. So we have these mid-screen to corner routes. Able to kind of do these key blast staircase combos to bring the opponent down to the ground. And again, end with our Candy Beam, Dragon Rush, Mystic Arm Swing, finish. Building over 2 bars. Another variation you can do. Well, actually, I think this is showing up the Light Starter and the Mystic Ball Link. Again, with another really good finisher. Now, if we jump out of this one, we can look at his full screen coast to coast routes. And again, thanks to the reduced delay on his J specials, as well as the decreased startup of his J medium, a lot of these links wouldn't have worked before. Coast to coast, 6K damage. Beautiful. And you also have a variant like this. Bring him down to the ground, picking him up with the faster 2M option now as well. And then, of course, there's the corner optimals that Liquid Enjoyer is posting. using that buff to Mystic Arm Ball that we talked about. Little loop right here. Staircase stuff. All to get this grounded finisher into our Candy Beam. Dragon Rush, Mystic Arm Swing. 6.5k damage on a medium starter. That is absolutely gorgeous to see for Kid Bizzle. All versions of Mystic Arm Swing have had their delay on whiff reduced. So let's take a look at what it used to be. Previously, you get about 42 frames, 43 frames of the light version, 51 frames for the medium version, 52, and then 41 frames for the EX version. Let's see what the reduced delay on all of these versions of Mystic Arm Swing are now. 40 frames, 40 frames, and 31 frames. So now these options are pretty safe to kind of fish for at times in neutral, especially the medium version. I mean, going down from like 50 frames to 40 frames, it's a 10-frame difference. That's pretty substantial. And the EX version actually being the safest out of all of them, kind of making it feel better to fish for this one, giving Kid Buu just another long-range anti-air option that might not feel as committal to go for as it once was. Previously, Arm Ball was a fairly slow option for Kid Buu to use, but it could result in a lot of plus frames. So as you can see, it was about 36, 37 frame startup. And once you got the lockdown onto the opponent, you had 50 frames of advantage to work with. So, you know, you could basically kind of create your own mix-ups, but sometimes it was a little want to do anything with it. For example, if I try to do a simple, like, jump delay air dash mix, I could still counter hit the opponent right out of it. So it could function So overall, it was a fairly useful tool there and definitely had its applications. And of course, if the opponent tries to do this and I just go empty low, well then, you know, I had some true mix-up right there. But of course, the one thing that's probably holding a setup like this back is going to be the fact that there's enough of a gap for the opponent to reflect either option. So, you know, you're playing basically, does my opponent reflect my high-low 50-50 mind game, or do they not? Now, let's check out the new properties of Arm Ball. So, the startup has been decreased, as well as the delay. So, it's about 3 frames faster, and again, we're still seeing about 55 frames of advantage. But, if we set the opponent to guard first only, I didn't get my light attack there. Kid Buu can now actually just true string this high-low mix, so all of a sudden, reflect is not an option against it anymore. If Kid Buu is able to go into this option off of any of the safe stagger pressures, by the way, he just sets up like a true high-low 50-50 mix-up for himself, which is kind of crazy, actually. This gives him, I think, like some really potent anchor material to him, because all the while, you know, while you're threatening with all of your safe stagger options, the opponent has to be terrified of you going for this Arm Ball. Granted, if they see it, they should be able to react to it and deal with it, but it's going to be tricky for them to identify it so long as you're mixing up your timings and making your staggers very ambiguous. Which, again, is going to be fairly potent just with the plethora of options Kid Buu has in this version. Candy Beam will now regenerate more blue life during its animation, so let's go ahead and take a look at how much it used to heal. GT Goku, hit it. So this is about 4,000 life of blue health that we have. And, you know, I would probably estimate that we generated about 1/5 of it or so. So, pretty modest heal overall, and it's kind of insulting when you consider that Lab Coat 21 can heal true life with her attack, while Kid Buu was limited to healing his blue life. So let's see how much blue life Kid Buu can now regenerate with a successful Candy Beam. It's a pretty substantial amount, almost looking like double of what he used to be able to regenerate. Of course, this is still limited to just blue life. It's not like, hold up a second. It's not like Kid Buu is going to regenerate anything past his blue life. Which again is a little bit annoying to me. I mean, Lab Coat can regenerate like true health bar. Why can't Kid Buu? He literally regenerates in the show. But, I mean, a buff to this is a buff to it, I guess. Human Extinction attack had a buff to its delay, so let's check it out. Previously, Kid Buu here would be about plus 11, plus 12 in this situation, so you didn't actually get a safe jump here against the opponent. So you can see, pretty easy to anti-air him. Now let's take a look at the new frame advantage that Human Extinction attack has. 21 frames of advantage. So, with that increase in about 10 or so frames, Kid Buu now gets a safe jump here. That's kind of a crazy thing. So now if you end the combo right here with Kid Buu, you're able to opt in for a little bit of extra damage and still get your Okazemi set up as well. It also means that, you know, there might be some other trickier things you can go for, or even more defined set play options that could involve an assist or other tools in Kid Buu's kit. It's a pretty strong buff. The final change to talk about with Kid Buu is to Pearl Flash. Previously, the startup was 10 frames for the move to come out, and of course, you had that frame for invincibility. This means at some longer distances, it was pretty quick, you know, reaching the opponent here in about 20 frames, so it was kind of viable as like a neutral option in order to work here, but definitely not something that you would see too often, although granted, when did you ever see Kid Buu in the previous patch? So now let's check out the Pearl Flash attack. As you can see, it's about 2 frames faster, so it gets the iframes we see at frame 4, which I think it did before as well, but in the previous patch it listed it as like frame 6. I'd have to slow it down and see. It might have just been full invincible at frame 6 instead of frame 4, and now it's frame 4, but it does hit at frame 8. This also means that at these longer distances, it's going to connect just that much faster. I mean, this is a frame 15, frame 20 sort of option to catch the opponent out, meaning that if the opponent does like a committed ground special, like GT Goku firing a Kamehameha, you should be able to react and punish with this Pearl Super Flash. Of course, your follow-up afterwards is a bit limited. It's not like you can cancel a Super Dash here or vanish to pick up a combo. You could just basically DHC, but this is useful in situations where the opponent is at low enough life to where you're going to get the kill on them just with the Super alone. So, and this also might affect a couple of his DHC routing options as well, but since you can't really go into this Super from DHCs, I don't think it's really going to affect any sort of tag in since he does Human Extinction attack. But, you know, maybe this means that if you start with Kid Buu, you do a Pearl Flash, you might get some new links or things like that. But I think most of the purpose of this buff is to buff its use in neutral. Honestly, out of all the characters we looked at so far, I think Kid Buu is probably the most buffed character in this patch. Unfortunately, he's just starting from a lower power level compared to some of the other castmates, right? I mean, like, Kid Buu, pound for pound, got more buffs than, like, Krillin or than, like, Ginyu in this patch, for example. But I think that those two characters are still stronger than Kid Buu just because Kid Buu's kind of been playing catch-up. It sort of feels like in this patch, Bandai's finally letting him play modern Dragon Ball FighterZ, and especially also, like, removing some of those old, long-time weaknesses. I mean, a lot of these changes kind of feel like reversions of nerfs in the past. Like the fact that 2M is now safe on block. That feels like a reversion of a nerf that happened to him years ago. And buffing up his neutral with like the speed of all his normals and all these delays do open up whole new combo routes that he's never had before in his life that give him tons of damage, tons of quarter carry, really good meter build. I honestly think that Kid Buu is not a bottom 3 character anymore that some people would have placed him at in the previous patch, but he's a pretty solid choice. If you're looking to play like a wild character that has like crazy mix-up potential, long-range normals, pretty good damage, and pretty strong set play, I think Kid Buu just might be a really good pick for you to go look at.